Hello, everyone. My name is Brian McCracken, Sales Manager with ED Bradley. Today, we are starting a new series that we're going to call Meet the Makers, in which we have invited some of our favorite manufacturers to take part in a quick little conversation, kind of fill everybody in about our favorite products and how they fit in the marketplace and how they're here to help you. So the first one that we have in our series is going to be Leeuwenburgh Veneers. And joining us from Leeuwenburgh Veneers is Erik Leeuwenburgh. Am I saying your name right, Erik? Is that how you pronounce the last name?
Well, being an English speaker is quite well, but in Dutch you would say Erik Leeuwenburgh.
I'll leave it there. I'll mess it up even worse if I try that. Leeuwenburgh Veneers is the manufacturer of one of our favorite products from West Coast Laminating called Lignapal. And Lignapal, some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not, but it is our real wood pre-finished veneers, and it's had a real splash in our marketplace. And so we thought it would be really nice to jump in and learn a little bit more about the product and where it comes from, more importantly. So thanks for joining us, Erik. I appreciate you taking the time. To start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the founding of the company, and maybe what inspired your company to get into the veneer industry?
So the company was actually founded by my father in 1976, and it was basically a veneer trading company. So my father was working in the veneer business, and he wanted to found his own company. So at that time, that basically meant buying big parcels of veneers in the US and Canada, importing the veneers into Holland, selecting it, grading it to the standards of certain customers, which was in those days the furniture industry and doors. But what we did see over time, that this market kind of shrunk. So the manufacturers in Holland, they got a lot of competition from the Germans. Those manufacturers failed. You saw different finishes, alternative surface finishes coming up, like lacquered MDF, laminates, those kind of things. So we kind of had to change the company and start looking for a different market, and that market turned out to be interior decoration. We have a very strong mega yacht building industry here in Holland. So, and a lot of luxurious type projects. So basically what happened is over time, from basically stocking 5 to 6 species, we went to over 100 species, like figured species, pearls, all sorts of exclusive stuff. Just to, look at this, at the change in the market. Now, another thing we noticed is that you can offer a lot of different veneers, but you also need skills basically to work with those veneers. And what we did see is that a lot of our customers, they invested a lot in automation and rationalization of their production. So a lot of CNCing and those kind of things. But actually, the old guy in the corner who knew how to work with veneers, that guy disappeared. And we basically saw that there was, a demand for easy to work with veneers. Basically problem-free veneers. So that basically inspired us to start pre-finishing veneers. It did start, step by step, but that was the basic motivation. People like wood, they wanted to have wood, but wood, in a way, it's nice, but it's a problem as well. And basically, if you have a production which is very well automated, you can produce rationally, but you need to have a basic raw material which is easy to work with, and that's what we aim to do. So that's kind of the background of the company as such.
And how long has the company been actually in business now? I know your father started it. How long has Leeuwenburgh actually been a?
1976. That's almost 50 years.
Wow.
Actually started production out in the mid 90s. So we started out by splicing veneer faces, making paper back veneers, making laminate back veneers, and then we went to slowly, in about 5 years' time, we went into pre-finishing. And this pre-finishing first started out with projects. So somebody wanted to have a certain type of veneer, and we said, okay, we can offer you to include the finish, because then you know what you're going to get and you have no surprises. And then the next market basically was the marine market. So we have a lot of boat manufacturers who are looking for a consistent product, stained product, pre-finished product. So we started supplying these people. Basically, they are people who get every week or every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, they get materials, they put it in the rack and basically pull it from the rack to compose their furniture. But this is, standard production. Of course, from that market, we also got this demand for high gloss. So another step later, which was basically in the year 2000, we installed a new lacquering line to be able to make a super high gloss finish as well. And basically with the introduction of that, we served a lot of boat manufacturers, but also coat manufacturers in the US and people in hospitality, kind of like, the casino type stuff, in the high gloss. So step by step, we get to different types of finishes. Now in 2005, we switched as well from this high gloss and open pore systems in a totally water-based system. So up till that time, our open pore systems were all solvent-based, but you can imagine that people don't want to work with solvents anymore. So we switched that. And a couple of years later, we took the next step, which was basically the introduction of a standard collection, as you know today, more or less. The collection changed, of course, over time, but this was quite a step to go from OEM servicing and projects into a standard collection, where the standard collection was promoted with architects and designers and end users to get products specified. And this is basically a large part of what we do today.
So the OEM business is still a large portion. Is the boating industry still a large portion of your business?
Well, let's say the boating industry, OEM in general, is about 1/3 of what we do. And the rest is all, basically collection based.
What is it about Lignapal veneers that lends itself to the boating industry? Is it just the aesthetics of it, or is there something about the product that makes it well suited for a marine environment like that?
No, the main thing is that what we focus on is the boat market, which is actually a serial boat production. So you're talking about yachts between, if you put it in feet, motor yachts from 45 foot up to 150 foot. That kind of market. Those are basically yacht builders which build a lot of boats a year. So you're talking about between 100 and 300 boats a year. And what they need is a standardized product, standardized color, standardized basic lacquer. And that's the reason why, basically. So we do the same selection type thing on those woods. We have kind of stain standards with them. And they basically get this product, cut it into pieces, and they mix everything up. So today they are producing furniture for boat type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they might make a galley unit for this one, and they might make a totally different space for another yacht. They mix everything up, and they expect it to be more or less the same color and grain. So this is basically the reason. And these people, they come from working with raw veneer, where they have a zillion colors, you can imagine. So they try to adapt that in their lacquering departments, but that doesn't work because they get darker and darker and darker simply to be able to get it uniform. Then they have all this labor basically to build up the lacquer system. It's for them a sitting duck. You cut out a lot of costs, you cut out a lot of inconsistencies. That's the reason why we're working with them, but it's serial boat producers. So it's not so much like, you build a one-off. Of course, we can offer product to these people, but in essence, it's the serial boat builder. And what is an interesting example is that we do have some boat builders. They're mainly, larger catamarans, which are sold piece by piece, but kind of customized. And their customers, they actually get our collection. So they pick an interior of a boat based on our collection. And then when they pick the boat, we make kind of like a boat kit. So they get a couple of hundred boards, which are made in this color scheme, and they make the interior out of it. So those people that are building one by ones, but in essence, our main boat market is serial production.
And that's what the consistency of the veneers lends itself to. You can see what you showroom, and that's what you get in the finished product.
Yeah.
Cool. How about 50 years of business now? What do you see as the most significant milestones in the journey from when the company started until today?
Of course, the thing is that over time you have a development in what you actually are able to do. So we get from let's say starting to actually finish materials, but we were roller coating in those days. That gave us a lot of problems because of the limitations of this kind of process. So then the next step is going into curtain coating, which has a lot of advantages and gives a way better quality at the end of the day. Then we go into the system of being able to high gloss, which is also a fairly big step because of the complications you have in this finish. And next big step is, of course, starting to work with the standard collection. And then, we've been basically increasing capacity throughout all the years. So there's a lot of expansion in buildings. And let's say in the last year, we put up a new building again, about 30,000 feet, to install again a new lacquering line. So we're just keep investing in the business.
Sounds like just like a lot of our customers, a lot of our custom woodworkers, the finish is kind of the sticky point, the pain point for a lot of it. When you converted from roller finishing to curtain finishing, what was the advantage? Why the change to curtain finish?
Well, the main thing is, of course, if you're roller coating and you put a lot of effort in it, you can make a fairly nice finish. But if you change, for instance, if the volumes of the lacquer change a little bit, the gloss of your end product changes. If you have a different color, the gloss level of your end product changes because of the heat involved. You get a certain texture of the surface, which just isn't the natural feel of the wood. With the curtain coating, you put a lot of material on the surface. Basically, 65% of what you put on the surface is just water. And the lacquer gets the time of just follow the grain and the texture of the wood, basically the natural flow over the wood. After the water has been dried, you get a UV curing, which makes the lacquer extremely strong. So if you have a traditional lacquer, which is acid curing, it takes about a week or 2 weeks before you get the maximum strength of the finish. And even that finish is not so strong as our standard finish. If you look at, for instance, the resistance against getting more glossy, you go over it with just like this, with your nail. In the standard PU finish, you see that already. You look against the light. With our finish, you don't. So those are things we want to have. We set out to make a finish which basically emphasizes the best out of the wood. So it should have the look, the feel, the resistance. That should be optimal and not making only the most cost efficient finish. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a very rational production, but number one is it should look good, the feel should be really good, and the quality of the finish should be good. When you tick those boxes, we want to be as rational as possible. But we see in the market there are other products which, number one is keep the cost as low as possible and then accept basically flaws in the product or, making compromises in the finish. So that's what we don't want to do. We want to have a top grade product.
I think it's the 3 horsemen of a good veneer. Looks good, feels good, works good.
Yeah, but to be honest, if you want to have a real wood veneer, you want to have it look like veneer and feel like veneer. if you're going to compromise that all the way, you get to a point where, you know, it's kind of like swearing in church, if you know what I mean, but you might as well take a laminate, you know?
Yeah.
Why go through all the pain? Yeah? So we don't want to compromise the natural aspect of the wood. We want to have, you know, the maximum out of the wood, because that's why you choose wood.
Obviously, the coating process is much different than much what else is out there on the industry. What else sets Lignapal apart? I know it's, you know, it's a focus on quality, it's a focus on feel, it's a focus on look. But in addition to the finish process, what would set Lignapal veneers apart from?
The thing is that we also put a lot of emphasis on focusing on getting this color consistency. It is a very difficult theme basically in natural wood, but you know, in order to achieve something like this, to give you a little bit of some information about that, especially on the oak. Today, you know, a lot of all of our items are based on oak, and oak has a lot of different colors basically. So what we do to get to narrow down this whole color variation is we basically check the veneer when we before it gets into our warehouse on texture and color. Then these veneers come into a warehouse and they get selected. We pull basically from every individual log, we pull a veneer leaf. This veneer leaf gets sanded, so you get the real color of the veneer. So you take the condensation off actually. Then the sanded strips, they're all measured on color and they're basically grouped together into what we call color groups. The veneers from one color group, they get spliced together. And then when we make the production, we might have in one batch, for instance, 2 color groups. Then our color guy comes in, and if we stain an item, we take it from one color group, tweak the color, so basically it puts a little bit of yellow or bits of red or whatever it takes to tweak the color for the same end result. Then we run the production, and while running the production, we have an inline scanner which basically scans all the panels all the time. So basically the guys on the production line, they look and they can just see a graph moving. So if it goes up or down, they know there's a problem, they have to stop and they have to realign things. But what happens in staining a lot, especially if you do it on the line, you run hundreds or thousands of panels, the color drifts away. It's very difficult to see it because it goes very slowly, this process. So that's why we have an inline scanner which measures the color continuously, and they just get a graph. So it's very easy to see if things go out of line or not. Basically with every color group, so for instance, we run 150 panels in one color, and we get to the next color group, which is the same color, the same end color, but the veneer is different. Then the whole process starts again of tweaking the color, test panel, test panel, test panel, and then they start running again. So the bottom line is that we put a lot of effort basically into this color.
Yeah, the quality control process sounds like that's probably the most significant cornerstone of the whole process.
Yeah.
Including the quality control process, what is the time start to finish before you get from when you run something through the factory to when it's actually ready to go be installed?
In theory, if you would say what's the net time you actually need to make, for instance, a sheet of Lignapal, yeah, in theory that's like 3 to 4 days. Problem is that you have these steps of, for instance, batches in veneer which are the same color, they need to be selected. Then you get the splicing process in groups, etc. So that takes us about 3 to 4 weeks to basically run from A to Z a batch.
I would imagine veneer selection is part of the quality process. Where do the veneers come from? Are you really picky in what you see and where the logs are, or do you rely on the factory process?
We have of course our favorite origins of the oak. It's mainly about the oak. I mean, the walnut. We have 2 big species, walnut and oak. Those are the biggest. Walnut, of course, is American black walnut. That's A lot of it comes from Pennsylvania, but walnut is a bit easier because it's easier to control on the color. The oak, we mainly focus on oak from either certain areas in Germany, and a lot of it comes from Croatia. Simply because of Croatian oak and this specific area in Germany offers lighter color wood, and it's not wood which is kind of pinkish. So if you go, for instance, like it's not like black and white, but in essence, if you go to France and you get your oak from France, you get this hint of red in it. American white oak for us is relatively this pink in it. It's not that it's red, but it's simply if you start staining and specifically whitish type colors, it's a problem. Then the other thing, of course, is that if you're talking about those areas, but also, for instance, we have some stuff coming from Poland, but they're all basically certified woods. Now, of course, the other thing is that we don't want to mess around with wood which isn't actually non-controversial. So even if you get to a point where it's not certified, we want to get the assurance from our suppliers that it's non-controversial wood. So basically not stolen, illegal harvested, etc. So that does mean that you need to stay away from certain areas as well. There are, I don't want to mention the areas, but there are areas, if you get wood from there, you're not sure that it's not illegal harvested. So you don't want to mess around with that, to be honest. But for basically the quality of the wood, our favorite areas are Croatia, big time, and certain areas in Germany. And then of course they're all picked. So the majority of the veneer is bought by me, and I go look at the veneers. It's a yes and no situation. So it's not like just ship or something. It's basically pre-selected by me. I make in my notes of a selection. I make notes. They go to the warehouse, and our staff in the warehouse does the selection after that, and then you get the whole process with the color checking. So it does take some steps, but at the end of the day, if you invest the time at the beginning, it does pay off at the end.
I think that process is very interesting compared to a lot of the more standardized products that we see, whether it's laminate or hardware, things like that. There's just buy the stuff and you make the stuff. I like the process is really cool.
The thing is that in a lot of cases, if you look at the manufacturing of a standard veneer board, in a lot of cases people take a certain grade, which is kind of like what they call an AB grade. So it's a mix of nice and not so nice material. They splice everything up, and afterwards they start selecting the spliced faces. Now that is in a way efficient, but the thing is, you get like 3 of these, 4 of that. It's all over the place. You just cannot control it. So we, like to have logs, bigger logs, so it's easier to have more uniformity in the color of the wood and more of the same type of grain. But of course, everything, it is an effort.
Yeah. Being that Lignapal is a real wood product, what's the contribution to sustainability with this? Is it just where the wood is sourced, like you mentioned, where you're really careful that you're not?
If you look at the whole picture of it, it's of course where it's sourced. So you got to be. I think the majority of what we use as veneer is either FSC controlled wood or PEFC certified material anyway. But also the material which isn't certified, as I said, we ask our suppliers for a written declaration that the material comes from non-controversial sources, so legally harvested material. That's number one. The other thing is, if you're looking at a pre-finished product like we produce, it's also about the type of finish you give. So we work with water-based lacquer, which basically means that you have no solvents. So it's not like normal traditional spraying, people use solvents. They just blow it into the open skies. We are curtain coating, which basically means that we don't have any overspray. So if you start spraying a panel, at least 40% of what you use goes up in the air, and whatever, it's a waste. In curtain coating, you can see it in the video as well. It shoots through kind of like a waterfall of lacquer, but anything which isn't on the panel gets refiltered and reused. There's no wastage there. Then the other thing is, we're professional finishers, so this is what we do. It's not like one of the jobs we do. So basically, it's a professional setup. We have standards on how things should be cleaned, where the cleaners should are, how they get basically our waste gets reused or not. That doesn't happen if you're talking about a fairly small spray shop. Our systems are totally closed, so it's not like we're working in an open space and coating something. No, the whole system is closed. So basically, we draw air from the outside of the building. It gets filtered, it gets heated up, it goes through the whole system, and then it gets filtered again and goes out. So this is a closed environment, and less waste, water-based material, and what the wood we use basically is either certified or declared non-controversial.
And no complaints from your neighbors for stinky finish.
No. I know, but to be honest, we switched in 2005 from solvent-based to water-based, and we actually didn't need to, man. So it wasn't like we got complaints from our customers, but you could. Let's say we had a permit and those kind of things, but the people around you, they just don't like the smell as well. So you might be able to continue those things for another year or 5 or whatever, but you don't want to be the guy who stinks, Yeah. So we basically switched just to be ahead of those issues.
That's an aspect that I think is becoming more and more important to a lot of people, especially on the design and the architect end. We get a lot of questions on the sustainability topic, so that's great. Obviously we're seeing, we're the first distributor of Lignapal in the United States, and we're seeing orders come from the East Coast, the Midwest, the South. I mean, obviously our focus is on the West Coast, but we're seeing people reach out and ask from all over the country. So I would assume it sounds like you guys are really globally distributed. With that being said, is there a few projects that have been done in Lignapal around the world that have been your favorites over the years?
Well, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and then I don't have the most the items which are the furthest away. But let's say some projects which I really liked is also has to do with kind of the buzz around it. So the first thing was we did Oak Rift Grey, which was an item which is out of the collection now, but for the London Olympics. So they got like this stuff all over the place, but it does give people were talking about it. So that was a very nice one. Another thing is the new, basically they're redoing the Houses of Parliament here in Holland, and we supplied a lot of walnut, bronze walnut, and rift oak for that. And we were talking about thousands of panels. Another one is which we already discussed previously, is the Rosewood Hotel in The Hague. And this is not because it's such a high quantity or anything like that, but it's though classic looking, but it's from a flat panel. They make a really complicated panel out of it, which is technically a very nice item to look at, because everybody you show the pictures, they're like, okay, how did they do it? Another one is normally we always get a certain amount of competition from laminates. So you have an architect and they say, oh, let's specify this rift oak. Then of course the it goes to a tender and people try to offer alternatives and they come up with laminates kind of looking like it. But normally, from our specifications, some laminate eats out of our specification, if you know what I mean. Now, we once had it, and this is not the normal situation, we had it the other way around. So this was the MBS, this company called, it was built for in Singapore. And the architect came up with a laminate, and then our distributor says, well, how about this? And we made a customized type item, which was a lined rail. And the architect just loved it, and they specified the whole thing into wood. So this is something which rarely happens, that they go from a laminate into a wood situation. So those are a couple of items which, yeah.
What was the building in Singapore?
Yeah, it's the MBS they call it. It's basically the company renting it at the end of the day. But the project was called MBS Singapore.
Sounds like there's a ton of good projects. I know a lot of the stuff that we see, some of our best highlight pictures that we've gotten have come out of Lignapal projects that have been, whether it's someone's kitchen or a restaurant or a hotel.
Yeah.
And we've seen a really cool broad spectrum of usage. With all these projects, what do you hope that customers take away from using Lignapal on their projects?
I think I spent some time with you in Las Vegas on the show, and it was also about what is very important for a customer, and I always think that you should take away when they start using the product. It should be very easy to use. So basically, working with it should be a good experience, and of course the end result, but also the work. Because sometimes people are skeptical, or they have experience with some competitive product, and we know that there are some differences, in the work. So what we see very, very often is that people, if they use our product, they're very enthusiastic in using it again. And of course, that's what you want, Sell something one time is okay, but you want to have the repetition of the whole thing. So those are the two things which I really appreciate.
Of course. We've got a lot of customers who have never used it before and are just starting to get interested in it. What piece of advice would you give to a woodworker that's looking to use Lignapal for the first time?
It's kind of stolen from Nike, but just do it, huh?
Yeah, that's a lot of us. I think it's that's it. If you show it, they will come. It's such a good product, and a lot of people really recognize that getting away from the bottleneck of finishing is a real benefit to everyone's business and everyone's time and everyone's quality of life. So that's
I can tell you that let's say maybe 10 years ago when we were at the show, or you have to kind of convince people that getting a pre-finished product is a good idea, and they're all like, yeah, but problem, issue. There's always a red flag somewhere, and at the moment it's kind of changed as well, not only because of VOC regulations, such as you have problems with solvents and stuff like that, but also simply the skills. It comes down to the same thing, if you go to a wood machinery show, it's all about computer-controlled stuff. People in the office, they kind of compose whatever they're doing in the shop. The only problem is, what are you going to do with the boards you use, and what are you going to do with the finish? Do you have staff for it? No, you don't at the moment. It's a problem everywhere. Get skilled staff, get people to do jobs like that. It's a problem. Surprises. It's a problem. So if you have a pre-finished product, you don't have these issues. You just cut it up. You know what you're going to do. You know your yields. You know the time involved. Everything. And let's be realistic about it. If you're working in the Western world, an hour of labor is quite expensive. So if somebody is fooling around with some panel which didn't work out well, the cost is going up. And that's very difficult to calculate. And with a product like Lignapal, yeah, you know what it's going to cost, and you know what you're going to get. You just need to cut it into pieces. Now, that's not a problem at the moment. So those are the things which are, in my perspective, very important.
I'm sure in everyone's perspective, that's one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest draws of this product. So we've talked about some of your favorite projects. We've talked about ease of use. We talked about your OEM. Looking forward, if there was one industry or one location or one space in the world that you'd like to see Lignapal, what would be your number one hope to see it in the future?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, we did some already did some nice. You kind of tend to think about governmental buildings or royal stuff or whatever. I mean, if you look at here in Europe, we did quite some governmental stuff. I mean, even the current Houses of Parliament, but also in the European community, we did a lot of big project on European Committee in Brussels, stuff in Strasbourg as well. Our royal family has Veneer from us. But there is I have a task for you, the White House, that would be great. I mean, it doesn't need to be the Oval Office, but, that would be nice.
Find the architect that's in charge of that. Probably whoever the next First Lady is. I think they often get to make the design choices for the
there you go. So,
First
yeah.
Cool. So I think lastly, I want to wrap up with something that's super important. If someone from the United States were to come and visit your factory, what would be your first Dutch meal or tradition that you would like to show an out-of-towner?
Well, the point is, if you're talking about the Dutch cuisine as such, and this is more about high-calorie food and that you're able to go out in fierce weather and work the land. So if you're talking about some decent food here in Holland, it's more about the French cuisine, Italian cuisine. And in our, basically, a town next to us, basically, which is officially called a city. You would laugh if you see the size of it, but we were talking about city rights and stuff. They have city rights. It's over 800 years old. And they have a place there which is called the Orphanage, and this is a very nice restaurant. It's actually French inspired if you want, but it's a very nice cuisine. It comes with a lot of, accompanying wines and stuff, and it's still relaxed. So, it's not like that you need to behave because of the waiters which are there. It's kind of a relaxed atmosphere, but excellent food. So, yeah.
What's the super calorie dense historic Dutch food to go work in the fields? What's that?
Potatoes, that's number one. That's the basic carb you would get. Then you end up with pork as meat, so nothing bloody but well cooked. And it's kind of, fatty if you want. So a lot of gravy, potatoes, and some veggies. That's traditionally Dutch food. And mashed.
Oh, really? All together, the pork, the potatoes,
yeah. Just.
That's great. That sounds awesome. All right. So, lastly, now that you've had a bunch of time to come to the United States and visit E.B. Bradley and visit some of our customers and come to our shows, what's your favorite meal that you've found while you've been here?
I mean, I'm not going to go on about burgers and stuff like that, but what kind of like. What I found impressive in a way, when I was in Vegas, I went to Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen, and I had this beef Wellington there, and I have to say it was excellent. So what did impress me is that you have such a large restaurant, and they're serving a lot of people. In general, it's normally like you have a big name on the door, and people think like, oh, this is Gordon cooking stuff. Of course, he's not there. But the way they, keep control of this quality, whatever they serve there, is really impressive. That's kind of, I don't see restaurants in this kind of size over here, huh? And keeping up the quality. I mean, it's not difficult to have a big place where a lot of people are eating, but if you want to have still a certain excellence in it, I find that really impressive, I have to say. And nice, good food.
Yeah, that beef Wellington is a heck of a thing. That's good stuff. It sounds to me like Lignapal is the Gordon Ramsay of the surfacing world. Larger operation, always maintains great quality, great consistency. And we really appreciate that. We appreciate your time. More to come.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Erik.
Thanks.